You know when a technique doesn't turn out the way you planned, but somehow ends up looking even better? That's exactly what happened in today's video. A simple but beautiful stencil turned into 3 completely different looks that are easy and quick to create. I'm also sharing a lovely 2-for-1 card idea and an easy way to customize your glitter paste using your ink pads. So if you've been wanting to add more texture, sparkle, and mixed media techniques to your cards, let's dive in. I'll start with this Altenew Iridescent Glitter Relief Paste, and the sparkle is stunning. I'll use the Altenew Shadow Bloom stencil set from their May 2026 release throughout this video to show you how I maximize the use of my supplies. It's a beautiful floral design with 2 stencil layers, and you can create anything from a really bright, bold look to something soft and subdued depending on the colors you choose. This is the Coastal Mist Fresh Dye Ink collection, and the colors are gorgeous. I'll be using several of these inks today, and I'm also going to show you a fun technique using the relief paste. Of course, I'll be applying the paste with my new palette knife set that Altenew included in my ambassador box. I've already cut out a 5x7 panel since this is a 5x7 stencil, and later on I'll decide whether I want to keep this as a full 5x7 card or trim it down to an A2 size. Now, as I mentioned, this is a 2-layer stencil set. I actually tested this out beforehand, so I already have an idea of how I want to approach it. The layers are marked. This one is layer 1, although I'm not sure if the camera is picking that up. Ideally, I would normally start with layer 1 because that's the intended order, but since I'll be applying paste to that layer, I'd have to wait quite a while for it to dry before moving to the second stencil. So instead, I'm going to switch things up a little and start with layer 2 first. That way, I can finish all my ink blending before moving on to the paste application. This stencil has a lot of intricate details, and I'm worried that if I go in with a blending brush without securing it properly, the fine areas could catch on the bristles. Even with a foam blender, I think I'd run into the same issue. The delicate details could shift or even tear, and I might also get ink underneath the stencil, which would ruin those crisp edges that I'm looking for. So today I'm going to use pixie spray to temporarily adhere the stencil to the cardstock so the intricate details stay down and don't get caught in the brush. I'm going to spray the backside of the stencil, and you do want to shake the bottle really well first. I'm just going to spray a light coating over the back and then let it sit for about a minute so it becomes tacky before adhering it to my cardstock. Hopefully I managed to get spray behind all those intricate details. The nice thing about pixie spray is that it's repositionable, so even though it's sticky, you can still lift and move your stencil if needed without damaging your cardstock. I'm going to start with the lightest color ink. This ink pad feels a little dry, so I'm not getting as much color as I expected. It also looks like I didn't apply enough pixie spray in some areas because I can see the stencil is lifting slightly. I forgot to use my spray box because laying it flat in the box would have gotten a uniform spray on the stencil surface. Another option for highly intricate stencils like this is to use a pouncer tool instead of a blending brush. You can stipple or pounce the ink onto the stencil instead of using circular motions, which helps prevent shifting. But I decided to use my small Altenew blending brush today. By the way, the color I'm using here is Frosted Sea Glass. It is a very pretty color. I'm also intentionally using varying pressure while blending because I don't want the entire background to look perfectly uniform. I like having lighter and darker areas for dimension and visual texture. I think I got some pixie spray on my work surface, so that's also holding the cardstock down on my magnetic glass mat. This is another type of twofer. Hold down the stencil as well as the cardstock. The first round is done, and now I'm going in with Coastal Haze. I'll use this color mostly around the bases of the leaves and stems to create depth and contrast. I'm still being fairly loose and organic with the placement, not aiming for perfection here. If you're looking for the list of supplies, you'll find affiliate links in my blog post that I've linked in the video description. It would help me out a lot if you use my links in case you decide to purchase any of these supplies. They won't cost you anything extra, but it will definitely help out my channel. So thank you so much if you decide to support me. Now I can lift off the stencil and look at that beautiful first layer. I'll use a couple of nonstick sheets because next I'll be working with paste and I don't want paste all over my work surface. For alignment, I can use the flowers as visual references for alignment and it shouldn't be too bad. I'll bring in another nonstick sheet to mix the paste. Since these areas are fairly small, I'm using the smallest palette knife from the set, and I did test this paste before filming just so I knew what to expect, and they go down like butter. I'm using the back of my palette knife to apply the paste in an even layer over these smaller rosebuds here. By the way, if you are into mixed media, I have a great offer on these palette knives for you. The details are in the video description, but I'll also share them at the end of the video, so stay tuned. Next, I'm taking some frosted sea glass ink and dabbing it on the nonstick paper. I'm going to mix the paste into it directly. You can already see the paste picking up the color. It creates a very soft tinted shimmer effect, but I'll realize in a bit that I barely got any color at all. I truly think this ink pad is a little dry though. Since this is a water-based paste, I could even add a tiny bit of watercolor if needed, but I'll stick with the ink. If you're enjoying this video, please give it a like and subscribe. It really helps support my channel. I should have mixed a bit more paste because I'm running low already, but as you know, I don't like wasting supplies, so it's better to mix a second round. Even if the color intensities don't match, that's perfectly fine because it creates color variation and extra interest. I'll need to wipe my palette knife off on a baby wipe before I dip it into the paste again, otherwise I'll just end up contaminating the paste. Look at how beautiful this is. The color is incredibly soft and subtle, and this is where I realized that I should have used a darker ink color because the lighter shade blends into the iridescence quite a bit, but honestly, I still love the effect. It looks so ethereal and delicate. While that first background dries, I want to show you my earlier test piece that has two tones of the paste. The larger flowers are blue and the buds are the original untinted iridescent paste. You can see the color much more clearly here. I think I may have used the Misty Harbor ink on this sample, which gave me the darker tint. So this version turned out much softer because frosted sea glass is such a light color, plus I didn't have enough ink to begin with. Even though I had intended to recreate the darker version, I honestly think this was a happy accident because the softer tones turned out absolutely stunning as well. Now let's move on to the second card while the first panel dries. I can use a heat tool to dry the paste because it's not affected by heat, but I'll just let it air dry. It won't take too long since this is a thin layer. For this one, it honestly doesn't matter which stencil layer I start with since I won't be using paste. And since I'm not using pixie spray this time, I'll just secure the stencil with tape instead. For this layer, I'm using caramel toffee. I'm keeping the color darker toward the centers of the flowers and blending outward for a softer effect. I hope you can see the etched alignment marks on the stencil that line up with the first layer, and that's what I'm trying to match up here. I still have a bit of tackiness left on the stencil from the pixie spray earlier, which is helping slightly. I'm varying the pressure while blending so the color doesn't look too flat or uniform. Normally, I love using my Altenew sticky mat for stenciling, but this stencil is larger than the mat, so it wouldn't work. Just look at how gorgeous this is already. The ink will soften and smooth out a little more as it settles. I'm planning to turn this into a 2-for-1 design, and I'll be trimming the panel down later. Next, I'll use an A2 panel and place the stencil back over it. I want the central rose to land roughly along the top third of this panel. If you're wondering what I'm talking about, I'll link to that video discussing the rule of thirds in the description below. This time, I'm reversing the colors and using caramel toffee for the foliage. I'll use the darker teal here and use a lot more pressure to get more of the ink on the florals. I want to make sure I get ink around all the edges because those details really matter once everything is assembled. I'm absolutely loving this color palette. I'm going to use this circle die to cut out this floral center and create an aperture design for this card. Once the circle is cut, I can layer it directly over the coordinating flower on the other panel to create a pattern or color interrupt, if you will. I'm not sure if there's a technical term for this, but I'll call it that for now. Before trimming everything down, I want to show you these fine frame circle dies that came in my box. What this die does is cut multiple super thin frames all at once. I also pulled out this really old Altenew paper pack from my stash. I'm not even sure if it's still available. One thing I discovered while experimenting is that if you use thicker cardstock, the dies sometimes won't cut completely through on the first pass. That actually gives you these stacked frame layers automatically, which is fantastic if you want thicker dimensional frames. Here's an example using glitter paper. You can see how some of the frames stayed partially connected after one pass through the die cutting machine. I simply used a craft knife to separate the thickness I wanted. That means you can intentionally use thicker cardstock if you want chunkier layered frames without needing to glue together a million individual die cuts. For this card, I think I'm going to use this teal paper because I love how it coordinates with the floral background. I'll trim the original 5x7 panel down slightly so I get a narrow border. By the way, these storage folders are DIY and I made them myself. If you're interested in how I created them, I'll link the organization video in the description box. Everything cut out beautifully since this is a lighter weight paper. I'm going to pop this focal circle up on some foam tape. I'll use some liquid glue underneath first so I have a little bit of slide time before it fully sets. This creates such a fun surprise element because you expect all the flowers to be orange, and then suddenly you have this contrasting teal flower in the center that creates the pattern interrupt. For the sentiment, I think I'll use congratulations. This stamp set is part of the Garland Greetings collection that comes with coordinating dies and stencils as well. Since it's a new stamp, I'll condition it slightly with my fingers first to remove some of the manufacturing residue and ensure I get a crisp stamped impression. I'll use the coordinating die to cut out the sentiment and a couple more layers from plain cardstock to add some dimension to it. I could add thin foam tape behind it, but stacking layers will make this narrow sentiment a lot more solid. I'm also holding on to the negative die cut piece because I'll use one of my favorite alignment hacks. It helps keep all the layers perfectly positioned while gluing. As you can see, this fits perfectly back into the negative space, which makes aligning the layers really easy and efficient. Normally, I double up my cardstock before die cutting to save time, but this cardstock is so thick that it would be difficult to cut through multiple layers cleanly. Have you watched my hack videos? I have a few, and if you're interested, I invite you to check out the playlist linked in the description. I'm sure you'll pick up a few that can help you improve your crafting process. Now let me show you how I create a 5x7 card base from a standard 8.5 by 11 sheet of cardstock. First, I'll trim the cardstock down to 10 inches. Then I'll score it at 5 inches to create the fold. Since this is heavyweight cardstock, I like to score from both sides to make folding easier and cleaner. Once folded, I'll burnish both sides well with my bone folder for a crisp fold. Now, since this side is 8.5 inches, I can trim off 1.5 inches along this edge, which gives me my finished 5x7 card base. I'm debating whether to use these as thin frames around the card front, and honestly, I think it looks really beautiful. It's also a fantastic way to use up scraps. Finally, I'll add a few tiny gold sparkle accents with this permanent gold marker for a little extra detail. And here is the finished card. Now for the third card, rather the second card from the 2-for-1 set, I'm using a top folding card base. This time I want to use one of the fine frames directly around the stamped sentiment, and I'll first do a temporary layout so I can find the exact spot for stamping. I'm actually going to layer 2 of these frames together, and I think that's going to work perfectly for this design. But before I adhere anything, I want to create the sentiment first, since I have to stamp it directly on the card base. I'll add just a tiny bit of temporary adhesive behind the panel so it doesn't shift while I position and pick up the stamp. I'll place this into the corner of my MISTI, and I want to keep the frame in so I can get the alignment correctly. Before removing anything though, I want to double check my alignment with this sheet of acetate to make sure the sentiment is sitting nicely within the frame. I'm using black ink so I can see well while I test, but I'll finally use Misty Harbor to stamp the sentiment. I plan to use clear embossing powder to heat emboss it for just a little bit of shine. So I'll apply anti-static powder to the cardstock to prevent the embossing powder from sticking to the background outside the stamped areas, although it wouldn't matter because it's clear embossing. Because of the heat embossing, the panel warped slightly, even though this is heavyweight cardstock, but I can flatten it later by placing something heavy over it. Now I'll adhere the frames with a bit of liquid glue around the edges. Now, as I promised to share the discount offer with you, I do want to mention that this palette knife set is currently 40% off just for my audience between May 10th and May 12th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. If you enjoy working with relief paste, texture paste, or mixed media in general, this is honestly a fantastic deal. So make sure you get the set before the 12th. My discount code is on the screen, but I'll also link everything in the description box below. Finally, here's the finished card with the iridescent relief paste that I created at the start of the video. I didn't want to add too much to it because the background itself is already so beautiful. I simply added a vellum belly band and heat embossed the sentiment with green glitter embossing powder. The sparkle and softness are absolutely gorgeous in person. There are endless possibilities with this stencil set. You could go really bold and colorful, or start with dark cardstock and use light colored ink for dramatic contrast. I recently made a video on the top tools for every card maker so you don't end up wasting money on stuff you don't need, and you can watch that video here.